Hello and welcome to another edition of Cosmic Diaries. This is Priya Kale and today is June 7th. Mercury stationed retrograde earlier this morning, and I've been meaning to record a video. I was actually going to record a video around the time of the Gemini new moon, and then just as I heard of Dr. Maya Angelou passing, and I didn't have words. So I would like to take a moment of silence right now before I start this. But yeah, so here we are, Mercury station retrograde this morning. So I want to talk a little bit about Mercury retrograde phases, and I'm going to try and not get very specific because I want you to be able to watch this video even months from now and years from now perhaps, and be able to still apply it. But if you want the specific details of this retrograde phase, I'll add a link below the video and you can check the blog, and I've sent out the Gemini new moon report with details about this retrograde phase to the subscription list. So you can sign up for that and I'll send that out to you. And the other reason being, if you've watched the videos before, you may have noticed I don't really have anything written down when I'm speaking to you. I pretty much, it's a stream of consciousness and whatever comes through, comes through. So it's harder for me to remember dates and times when I'm talking to you like this. So it's just easier for that. If you want the exact specific dates, it's just easier if you read the reports. But yeah, that being said, Mercury stationed retrograde this morning, and I spoke a little bit about, I explained in basic a little bit about how retrograde phases work in the Mars direct station video in Libra. And when a planet stations retrograde, and Mercury is the most common retrograde phase, Mercury stations retrograde 3 times a year. So, and it's the planet that's closest to the sun. And when it stations retrograde, it's not really moving backward in the sky. It just appears to be moving backward in the sky from the viewpoint of the Earth. But when that happens, the planet, and in this case Mercury, will recover a territory 3 times. So it will be in direct motion, then it goes back, and then it moves forward again. And we're currently in that point when Mercury is stationary in the sky and moving backwards. And this particular retrograde, then depending on what signs Mercury is retrograde in, we'll get a deeper insight into the nature of the energy of the retrograde and how it might manifest. And then depending on where those signs or Mercury is stationing retrograde in your chart, in particular, in this case, Cancer, Gemini, look at where you have Cancer, Gemini in your horoscope, in your natal chart, and that's where you're going to see this transit manifest itself. For example, for this current phase, Mercury stations retrograde in Cancer, and then will be moving back into Gemini, where the Sun is currently transiting. And Mercury is also the ruler of Gemini. So that makes it extra potent in terms of the messages that are coming through. And so I want to talk a little bit about how this energy plays out, because Mercury now rules the mind. And of course, okay, let me give you these dates really quickly. But Mercury entered shadow on the 23rd of May. It stationed retrograde today on the 7th of June. Then it'll move backward all the way until the 1st of July, when it stations direct. And then it recovers this whole territory again and will move forward and out of shadow on the 15th of July. And by then there's a whole other bunch of planets that are moving, changing positions in signs. Jupiter will change signs, Saturn changes positions, Mars changes signs. So there's a lot of activity in July. And this month of June and this retrograde cycle of Mercury is especially significant. So for this cycle, anyway, watch these dates, what was going on around these dates that I just mentioned and what comes up. You're getting important messages. And the standard precautions with a Mercury retrograde phase are, you avoid making major purchases. This, I can tell you from experience, it just turns out that you end up having to exchange it, return it, not use it, not need it. But sometimes you just do what you have to do, including it's just double checking all your information and communication, because there is a greater chance of miscommunication at this time, where you either mishear something or you misinterpret something. But all that means, it doesn't mean you can't do anything, but it's just understanding and being aware of the energy. So if you know it's raining, you're prepared. You know what you want to do on a rainy day. If you have to go out, you go out prepared with an umbrella. Or if you want to go out and play in the rain, then you go do that. But it's knowing what the conditions are. And that's all really astrology is telling us. But retrograde cycles are also a time when you may reconnect with people from your past or situations from your past that are coming up to be cleared. So definitely situations from the recent past, which will have begun from in the first shadow phase, in this case from about the 23rd of May up until now, the 7th of June, whatever you've been going through, you'll be recovering that territory. But really, especially now that Mercury is retrograde in the sign of Cancer, for example. So Cancer is the sign of emotions. It's the sign, it also represents your mother or the maternal aspect. Cancer also represents children, food, nourishment, your sense of security. And the mind is mercurial. That's Mercury. It rules the mind. And the mind is dualistic. But Mercury, at best, represents intelligence. Or, as in Vedic astrology, they call it Mercury is Buddha. So, Buddha is your single pointed consciousness. And then the opposite axis of Gemini, the opposite end of the axis, because Mercury rules Gemini, so is Sagittarius, which represents the one truth. The mind of Mercury, when it's retrograde, what we're really doing is we're going inward. It's, especially in Cancer, this is like diving deep into the sea, at the bottom of the sea, where it's calm, rather than reacting to the surface waves that are always crashing and the ocean is ebbing and flowing. And understanding the tides and the cycles of your own life. Mercury in retrograde in Cancer may also be bringing deep nostalgic feelings or memories from the past. But this is the time when you can really go to the source of something, a wound perhaps, and perhaps as far back as childhood, because this is Cancer. So look at what's going on in your life right now. It's reflecting a deeper truth about you. And this is something that will only come when you're able to quiet the mental chatter. And that's why meditation is important, or just being able to listen to that inner silence is important, because we're rushing around so much in today's world, and we get so caught up in this world that we forget to tune in to that inner voice. And that's when the duality creeps in, where you're looking at choices when truly the reality is oneness. So you can't really make the wrong choice. It's about understanding that It's about listening to that voice inside that's guiding you forward towards making the right choice. Sagittarius is the opposite end of this axis. And Sagittarius is the sign that represents freedom. Represents God, spirituality, religion, the higher mind, psychology, even astrology. And we do have a full moon coming up in Sagittarius on the 14th. So, again, I'm not getting into the specifics of that full moon. That'll be in the report. So, you can read that. But if Gemini represents the mind, communication, words, then all of these words really are pointing to a higher truth, which is Sagittarius, to a one truth. That's why they say the many religions are like fingers pointing to the moon. So, and all our words are essentially, or at best, a voice of a deeper truth that's coming through. What is intuition? Intuition is when there is an absence of thought and something comes to you, as opposed to you thinking it. Because when you're thinking it, it's coming from the ego or a mental construct. And the mind, at best, is a satellite dish and or a radio signal where it needs to be used as such, where the more we are clear of our own thoughts and beliefs, then we can see in between those two bars into the truth. Also, Gemini is the sign that rules information and Sagittarius rules knowledge, but until we're able to apply this information to our life and walk that path, it's not about knowing the path, but until we're able to read the signs and everything in this universe is speaking to us. It's just being able to read those signs and then apply them to your life. And what's the worst that can happen is you'll stumble, but you'll learn something and you'll grow from it. And every moment offers that new choice. And that's really what Gemini teaches us. All we really have is the power to choose. We don't control anything in this world. We can barely control ourselves. So life is happening. And we have a choice in how we respond to it. There are certain aspects of life that no matter what, we all face. Like birth and death. Our own and those of whom we love. If nothing else, this is one common experience. But every human emotion is something that we're all capable of feeling. Because we are human. So it's only the mind that divides and, that duality of Gemini where there's day and night, which really are a matter of perception. So if we want a glimpse into a greater reality, then what we're working with when we're working with Gemini energy or a Mercury retrograde, for example, is we're working on clearing the mind of perceptions, because it is the veil of perception that prevents us from seeing reality. We already are in the Garden of Eden. It's the fruit of the tree of knowledge that separates us from this reality. And that's the mind. So, as now we move through this retrograde cycle, go inward, go to the source. On the surface, yes, there may be relationships from the past coming back for resolution, or it's also important to look at what you want out of your current relationships and how you aren't unconsciously repeating your own patterns if you say you want something different. Go to the source of any sense of woundedness or a pattern. Look at where it comes from, because Mercury is going retrograde in Cancer. So there's a sense of something coming deep from childhood. Beliefs perhaps that you've held on from childhood because that's what you saw played out, especially perhaps in your parents' relationship or your primary caregiver's relationship. And you may be reenacting those unconsciously, and you don't have to. And you can if you want to, but it's just a matter of doing whatever you're doing consciously. Also, Mercury will make a conjunction to the Sun as it stations retrograde, and I don't have the date for that right now, but I'll put it on the blog. Again, that's in Gemini, so it's really listening to that inner voice. It's a time for reflection. It's a time for going inward, and the deeper you're able to dive, you're going to find pearls at the bottom of the sea. Also, by next month, as Mercury stations direct, look at what comes up and surfaces around then. There's more information surfacing, and certainly more information surfacing with the full moon. So I'll have that information in the full moon report. But next month, as the planets change signs, Jupiter enters Leo, Saturn stations direct, Mars enters Scorpio, Mercury will clear this retrograde cycle. Relationships are changing deeply, and the 2014-2015 horoscopes, if you've purchased them, you've already received an email from me, but they've taken on, if you haven't, they've taken on a life of their own, and I am going to be writing them covering all of 2015 now. So, and actually beyond, because there are transits that are going beyond that. So if you haven't gotten those already, I'd advise you to get them now, because I'm going to change the prices around the time of the full moon. But we're entering a whole new territory come July. And it's important now that you move with awareness of what you're resolving and want to leave behind in the past, because memories at the end of the day are not, the past does not exist. And with a retrograde cycle, yeah, we're going into the past, but it's understanding that we're in the present. There is only the present reality. So even though the course of the past may be surfacing in some way, ultimately they're reflecting an inner truth about you, and they're here to reflect an inner truth about you. And anything that you don't like in this world, especially, I have to keep myself calm sometimes, but I know that everything that we see in this world that we do not like is a reflection of ourselves. And the only way we can change that is by changing ourselves. So anyone who's out there opinionated because Gemini is about opinions, and Sagittarius will polarize things. So yes, everything exists, good, bad, ugly, all of it, but all of that again is our perception and our labeling of things. Gemini is the third sign. Before Gemini is Taurus. Taurus is the earth. Aries was the unmanifest manifest. Pisces is cosmic consciousness. So I'm going backward. So from cosmic consciousness comes Aries, which is the unmanifest manifest. Then we have the earth, which is Taurus. And then we have Gemini. So think about it. First man that walked the earth, he did not have words for things. He didn't know a rock was called a rock. Those were sounds. That's sound vibration. That's Mercury. That's air. So these were labels that came, these sounds came, they were created. That's not reality. So sure, I may call this a pen, but this is a pen because we've called it a pen. But what is this? Nothing. Everything was one. And in clearing the mind, we can get back to that state of oneness, when then the mind is still that one single point of consciousness, and then you are an instrument and a messenger of a higher truth here on earth. So, all right, I'm going to stop there. But chatty Gemini energy here. I've gone on for long enough, so I will stop here. But thank you for listening as always. And do check back in with the blog. I'll be back with more videos, and I'll update the blog with horoscopes soon. So yeah, check back in. And yeah, last word, Mercury has just stationed retrograde, so there's information surfacing over the next few days, especially as we lead up to the full moon on the 14th of June. So we can expect more revelations then. And the deeper you dive, you could find pearls of wisdom. So stay tuned, and I will be back with more. Thanks. Ta-da.